Hello. Today we're going to be talking about cell structure, like the structure of all the organelles that are inside the cell. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. All right, so the first thing we're looking at is the outside of the cell, and it's called the cell membrane. This is made up of lipids, and there's also some embedded proteins in the cell membrane. But the cell membrane regulates what can come in and out of the cell, okay? And it helps maintain balance or homeostasis of the cell. I know those are big vocab words, but homeostasis just means equilibrium, where it's equal on both sides, okay? So the cell membrane regulates what can come in and what can go out of the cell. The cell membrane is also known as being semi-permeable, all right? And what that means is that some objects can come in and some objects can't, all right? So semi-permeable means that some can come in and some cannot. All right? So all cells have cell membranes, but only plants have cell walls. Okay, so plant cells are going to have cell walls, and what the cell wall does, it helps strengthen and protect the inside of the cell, and it also gives like plants that hard feel to them. Like a tree can't move around like a human can, right? So trees are very rigid; they're very sturdy. That's because of the cell walls. If humans had cell walls, we would move around a lot more like robots. Okay, we wouldn't be as flexible. And now we're going to move inside the cell. The first thing inside the cell is cytoplasm. This is like a jelly. It's the liquid that fills up all the space inside the cell. And this is where all the reactions take place at in the cell. Okay, all the chemical reactions inside the cell are going to take place in the cytoplasm. It's just like the liquid that fills up the cell. The next thing is the cytoskeleton, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's pretty much the skeleton that holds the shape of the cell, right? And it's a network of different types of, like, they're called fibers, and they just hold up the cell shape, okay? All right, next we have the nucleus and the nucleolus, all right? The nucleus, it's the biggest organelle inside the cell, as you can see down here. This whole thing here is the nucleus. And the nucleus is like the control center for the whole cell, all right? Then this is also where your DNA is at inside your cell, all right? Very protective of that DNA. So the nucleus is the control center of your cell. Inside the nucleus, there is the nucleolus, all right? This word here, nucleolus. The nucleolus is what makes ribosomes for your cell, all right? And we're going to get into those in a little bit. So the nucleus is the control center. The nucleolus is inside the nucleus, and it makes ribosomes. A ribosome looks kind of like an acorn. There's two parts to it here. And ribosomes are nothing more than just an area that helps make proteins. It's the area where proteins are made at. All right, and making a protein is the whole job of DNA, really. So ribosomes is where the proteins are made at. All right, then we have something called the endoplasmic reticulum. It's a really long word. We just refer to it as the ER. All right, so there's a smooth ER and there's a rough ER. But the ER is just like a roadway. It's like the highway of the cell. It's where everything gets moved around the cell at, okay? So there's two types. There's a smooth ER and a rough ER. The smooth ER is what helps move around liquids, like stuff that's liquid. It helps move that around the cell. And the smooth ER does not have any ribosomes. The rough ER has ribosomes all over it. See these little dots here? These are all like, this is the drawing I did. The ribosomes all over it. And the rough ER specializes in making proteins. And that's where proteins are made at, is the ribosomes. The next two things are very important for our cells. The first one is called the Golgi. The full name is the Golgi apparatus, but we just call it the Golgi. And this is what checks proteins to make sure that they are made correctly and also ships them to the right place of the cell. Okay? So the Golgi checks to make sure proteins are made right and then ships them out. The mitochondria is like the powerhouse of the plant. It's what supplies all the energy for the cell. The mitochondria, it makes something called ATP. We're going to study those in another chapter, but mitochondria makes ATP, and that's like the power, like the fuel for the whole cell to work. And in plants, they're different than animals. Plants have chloroplasts. That's what makes plants green. But it's a carbohydrate. That's what collects sunlight so that plants can do photosynthesis. We're going to talk about photosynthesis in a lot more detail in a different unit. But chloroplast is what makes plants green. It's what collects the energy from the sun and helps the plant go through photosynthesis, where it makes its food for its own self. Okay? We're going to stop here, and we're going to move on. The next thing I give you or send out is